The delivery room lights were too bright, washing the walls in a cold white that made everything feel fragile. Amara Okoro Williams, the billionaire's wife who had smiled through 1,000 charity galas and a million whispers, stood behind the glass, palms flat, knuckles pale. On the other side, the homeless woman she'd hired as a surrogate, Nia Rivers, clutched the bed rails and screamed as the doctor called, "One more push!" Dion Williams, Amara's husband, a tech mogul with a voice that could command markets, stood at Amara's shoulder. He didn't touch the glass. He didn't blink. He stared as if the world had come down to the thin line between Nia's breath and the next second. Behind them, the elevator opened and Dion's mother, Mama Joyce, swept into the hallway with two of the aunts who had never missed a chance to giggle at Amara's empty arms. The aunts still wore gelly head wraps from a lunch they'd turned into a gossip parade. They saw the scene and hushed, though the shine in their eyes said they'd come to witness, not to comfort. "Push!" the doctor yelled. There was a sound then, a soft wet gasp, and a baby's cry, thin and fierce, cut the air. It was like a knife through tension. The nurse lifted the newborn just high enough for Amara to see a squirming, reddish bundle, a tiny fist that punched at nothing. Amara's breath broke into a laugh that sounded like a sob. Dion's hands finally rose to the glass, fingers splayed like he could pull his child through with force alone. "Baby girl," the doctor said. "She's here." Nia sagged back, tears spilling through her sweat. Is she okay?" "She's beautiful," the nurse said. "Strong lungs." But before the joy could settle, the monitor beeped again. Fast, insistent, and Nia's breath hitched in a way that made the doctor's head snap up. Something in the nurse's face changed. She glanced at the obstetrician, then down at Nia's belly. "Wait," the doctor whispered. "We've got another." Amara's heart stopped, then started again in a stutter. "Another?" she said, her voice a ghost in the hallway. "There's only one embryo." "That clinic," Mama Joyce muttered, making a face. "Rich people's experiments." The second contraction threw Nia forward. She grabbed for the rails. The room moved fast now. Hands, towels, the clap of a drawer, and the doctor was already positioned as if she'd been waiting for it. "Push again, Nia." "Now!" Nia screamed, a deep sound that tore through the glass and ran down the hall. Dion flinched. Amara felt the heat of panic climb her neck. Two babies? No one had said two. They'd signed papers for one. They'd been told one. "Here we go," the doctor said. Another cry, louder than the first, burst out and bounced off the ceiling. The nurse lifted a second baby, slippery and wild, and for a breath the room seemed to hang on a thread. This one didn't wail so much as roar. Tiny mouth open, tiny hands clawing at the air, like he'd been dropped into a fight and wanted everyone to know he'd win it. "A boy," the nurse said, stunned. "We've got a boy." Amara's pulse flipped. Boy and girl. Twins. It should have been joy multiplied, a miracle doubled. It should have been tears and laughter and dancing in the hallway. But it wasn't. On the other side of the glass, the nurse angled the boy to the warming table, and a second nurse bent over the girl. The doctor's voice went low, and the staff moved with the kind of precision that only shows up when something is not quite right. "Skin to skin," Amara said to no one, leaning forward. "They said we planned. We planned for one," Dion said, still quiet, still staring. "Amara, we planned for one." A door opened and the pediatrician rushed in. The aunts traded looks. One of them, Auntie Chica, lifted her phone as if tempted to record proof that the world was full of stories and she had found the best one. Mama Joyce snatched the phone down with a sharp look. The nurse dried the boy and paused. She shouldn't have paused, but she did. She stared, blinked twice, and adjusted the lamp as if more light might change what she was seeing. The pediatrician saw it too. He dropped his gaze from the monitor to the baby's face, then to the baby's foot, then to the tag the nurse had snapped around the child's ankle. "Is something wrong?" Dion asked, voice finally cracking. He turned to the intercom button. "Doctor, is something wrong with our children?" The pediatrician did not answer. He asked the nurse for a kit, cord blood, 2 swabs. The nurse froze again. The doctor gave the smallest nod, the kind you give when you wish a day would be ordinary and it won't be. Why swabs? Amara whispered. She could feel the room shrinking around her, the glass pressing in. One of the monitors beeped a steady reassurance, but another added a note that sounded like doubt. The pediatrician lifted the boy, turned him slightly, and for the first time the angle matched Amara's line of sight. She saw a mark below his left ear, a birthmark shaped like a comma. She'd seen that mark before, on a giant portrait in their Atlanta penthouse, the one of Dion's late father. The family called it the King's Comma. It had run through their line like a signature, skipping some, claiming others. Amara's heart leapt. Relief surged. Of course he was Dion's son. Of course the line had spoken. But then the nurse angled the girl, and there it was again. The same comma, darker, tucked along her jaw. Dion's hand tightened on the glass. Both? He said, confusion warring with pride. Both have it. Mama Joyce stepped closer, peering with the kind of ownership that blood gives. It happens, she said under her breath. Twins can take the same mark. But the pediatrician's frown deepened. He reached for the swabs. He took a sample from the boy's cheek, then from the girl's. He spoke to the doctor in a tone meant to be gentle and quiet. The doctor's reply was even softer, but the words slipped through the intercom anyway. Protocol, the doctor said. When unexpected multiples appear in a gestational carrier, we confirm chain of custody. Chain of custody? Amara repeated. The phrase tasted like iron. Nia lifted her head from the pillow, eyes swimming. What does that mean? Are my babies okay? Are their babies okay? The pediatrician placed the boy back on the warming table, then turned and looked directly at Amara through the glass. He didn't see a billionaire or the woman the gossip sites dressed in other people's envy. He saw a mother-in-waiting with fear running down her face like rain. Mrs. Williams, he said carefully, you were told there was a single embryo transfer. What we have here suggests a vanishing twin scenario, or an error at the clinic, or something more unusual. The hallway felt colder. The aunts leaned forward. Mama Joyce stood very still, her hand on the glass beside her son's, their fingers almost touching. What is more unusual? Dion asked, voice hard now. The pediatrician did not blink. Heteropaternal superfecundation is rare in natural conception, he said, picking each word like a step on a shaking bridge, and nearly unheard of in assisted reproduction. But twins with different fathers can happen if procedures are compromised. The words hit the hallway like a dropped tray. One of the aunts gasped. Mama Joyce's mouth became a line. Amara felt the world tilt, not because she believed it, but because it was the kind of idea that opens a hole in the floor. 2 babies. Same surrogate. 1 embryo. 2 fathers? That's impossible, Dion snapped. This was a clean, controlled process. My company paid for the top clinic in the state. There were cameras. There were logs. The pediatrician nodded. Then the tests will clear that up. Nia's voice was small, threaded with pain. I did exactly what they told me. I took every shot when I was supposed to. I slept where they told me to sleep. I was clean. She stared at the ceiling, as if afraid to meet Amara's eyes. I did this to get out of the cold. I did this right. Amara swallowed. She remembered the first day she met Nia under the highway overpass. A broken suitcase at her feet. The only color on her a bright scarf someone had given her. Amara had handed her a cup of hot tea and a card. If you want a chance, she had said, call me. Nia had called. They had signed papers. They had prayed with the clinic counselor. They had put hope in a petri dish and money in a bank and the future in a calendar. Now 2 futures were crying on a stainless steel table. The nurse brought the first baby closer to the glass, wrapped tight in a blanket. A little rosebud mouth soft now that the first storm had passed. Baby, she said softly. A label that felt like a mistake in a place where names should have been ready for months. Baby, Amara repeated, mouth shaping the syllables that should have been a name. She reached out, palm pressed to the exact spot where the baby's head would be if the glass went away. I don't care what the tests say, she whispered. though she didn't know if she meant it. We waited for you. The nurse turned to set baby A down and reached for baby B. The boy yawned, furious and sleepy all at once, as if the world was already late to meet him. The pediatrician checked his reflexes and glanced at the swabs bagged and labeled on the tray. We'll send these to the lab, he said. We'll know shortly. Mama Joyce lifted her chin. No lab is going to tell this family what it already knows, she said, but her voice trembled on the last word. Down the hall, a cart rattled. Somewhere, a monitor chirped its small mechanical heart. The ants had stopped whispering. Dion pushed away from the glass and paced one step, two, then stopped with his hands on his hips as if he'd run out of hallway and choices at the same time. Amara steadied herself. She wanted to hold the babies. She wanted to hold her husband. She wanted to hold a truth that would not slip. Instead, she stood taller and forced breath into her lungs. We will love them, she said, simple and fierce. We brought them here. We will love them. The pediatrician nodded once, a clean human gesture in a room run by rules. He turned to the doctor. Start the postpartum protocol. Keep the babies with the carrier until we clarify chain of custody. Keep the babies with Nia? Dion said, as if the sentence had been translated into a language he didn't like. It's standard, the doctor said, until parentage is confirmed. Something fell inside Amara, a silent dropping of hope into a well. She glanced at Nia. The young woman's eyes were closed now, but tears kept sliding sideways to the pillow. Amara saw the street in those tears, saw winter nights and empty pockets, saw a woman who had said yes to a contract because the world had said no to everything else. The lab courier knocked and the pediatrician handed over the sealed bag. A clock on the wall ticked in a way that seemed louder than it should be. Results in 2 hours, the pediatrician said. He met Amara's eyes once more, kind and clinical. Try to rest. Rest. The word landed strange in a hallway where 2 babies had remade the air. Dion took a step closer to Amara. For a moment it seemed he might take her hand. He didn't. He stared at the door to the delivery room as if he could see the truth forming letter by letter on the other side. Then the intercom crackled again, and the obstetrician's voice, gentle but weighted, filled the space. Mrs. Williams, she said, there's something else we need to discuss that may affect custody and consent. It's about the clinic's freezer logs. They don't match your transfer date. The hallway went silent. Even the machines seemed to hold their breath. Amara felt the world tilt a second time, steeper, darker, as if the floor had turned into a hill and she was about to slide. What do you mean? Amara said, voice steady only because she willed it to be. The logs don't match? The doctor paused. On the other side of the glass, the nurse pulled a chart, flipped a page, and looked up. It means, the doctor said, there is a possibility that the embryo transferred to Nia was not yours. 2 hours earlier, the Williams estate had been noisy with laughter that wasn't joy. The in-laws, Dion's mother, Mama Joyce, Auntie Chica, and Great-Aunt Ruth, sat in the glass-walled breakfast room that looked over the Atlanta skyline. They drank hibiscus tea and ate puff-puff while just asking questions. Their earrings flashed in the sun. Their words cut under the sugar. When will we stop setting the extra place for the child that never comes? Auntie Chica asked, tapping a spoon against her saucer. We can put a plant there. At least it will grow. Amara smiled the way women learn to smile when they are tired of bleeding in public. Her gelly was tied simple, a deep indigo that matched the river blue silk of her boo-boo. She kept her tone warm and her words few. On the far end of the table, Mama Joyce kept counting days on her phone, as if a calendar could bend to will. We have a plan, Amara said, keeping the steel in her voice under velvet. The clinic said everything is on track. Aunt Ruth leaned forward, eyes kind and sharp. Plans are good, she said. But children come when God calls them, not when money calls them. The way she said money made it sound like a servant that had forgotten its place. It stung. Not because it was wrong, but because it was too simple. Money had opened doors. Money had also opened mouths. Dion had arrived with a folder that morning, contracts, timelines, the last green checkmarks from the fertility app. He had kissed his mother's cheek, held his wife's shoulder, and announced the final step with the quiet pride of a builder laying a cornerstone. But pride could not stop whispers. Pride could not hush a family that loved hard and pushed harder. After breakfast, after a set of thin smiles and thicker comments, Amara had driven to the city shelter off Auburn Avenue. That was where she had first met Nia Rivers months back. The winter day the wind had cut through coats like gossip through a church wall. Nia had been standing under the eave, hugging a thrifted pea coat around her body, her eyes focused on the steam rising from a cup of free coffee like it might tell a future. "You don't know me," Amara had said then, careful, gentle, the way she talked to teenagers at her foundation. "But I have an opportunity. It's legal and it's fair. It will be hard and it will be worth it. I want to help you if you want to help me." People said the rich used the poor like steps. She had heard it. She had guarded against it. She had come with a contract, a counselor, and a promise. Housing during the pregnancy, therapy every week, full medical, a trust for Nia's future schooling, and a bonus at delivery that would buy 2 new lives, one for the child, one for the woman who carried the child. She had come with respect. It mattered. Nia had asked 100 questions and 2 that went deeper than rules. "Will you look at me like a person?" she had said. "And will you look at this baby like yours?" "Yes," Amara had answered both times, without blinking. They had built a plan that was part medicine, part faith, part math. The clinic was high glass and soft chairs, the kind of place where the receptionist's smile could have been printed. The director, Dr. Halpern, had white hair and a calm voice. The embryologist, Tolu Adebayo, wore green scrubs and spoke with the careful hands of a man who had carried hope between plates of glass for a decade. They had done the transfer. They had shown the ultrasound. One heartbeat, one flicker. The first time Nia saw it, she had cried into Amara's scarf. Amara had cried too, quiet tears that soaked silk. The in-laws had not stopped. At church, during a baby dedication for a cousin's 6th child, someone's whisper slid down a pew. "Money can't buy wombs that work." It found ears that were already sore. It found hearts that already bruised easy. Mama Joyce's mouth had tightened. Dion had held his wife's hand until his knuckles went white. Amara had sung louder and looked at the stained glass instead of the faces. Then the pregnancy had grown in steps and weeks, and the house had filled with new sounds. Nia's laughter at a comedy on TV, her soft humming in the kitchen when she craved akara at midnight, the thump of prenatal yoga videos through the ceiling. She was shy at first, always waiting to be told where to stand, what to touch, where not to go. It took time for her to accept that the pantry was hers, the couch was hers, the sunlight in the back garden was hers. She stopped calling Amara ma'am after the second prenatal appointment, when the baby kicked during the nurse's blood pressure check and made them all shout at once. After that, she said, Amara, like a friend trying a new word. There were other adjustments. Dion had rules. He liked rules. No phones in the nursery. No cameras in medical spaces. Security logs updated at every nurse visit. The house manager, stern, efficient, named Miss Thelma, kept a chart on the fridge with check marks that made order feel like safety. The clinic had rules too. They matched Dion's rules with clipboards and signatures. When a life is about to start, rules can be a kind of prayer. When the 3rd trimester came, a small worry began to grow in the edges of things. It wasn't a big worry. It was the kind you think is just weather. The clinic rescheduled an appointment twice in 1 week. "A lab machine is down," they said. The director, who always greeted them with a steady voice, was out of town for a conference, though the receptionist didn't know where. The embryology wing got a new badge reader, but only on one door. To Lou, the embryologist, started to look like he was holding a sentence in his mouth that he couldn't say. 2 days before delivery, a courier had arrived at the house with a document that should have come by email. Paper feels heavier when it should be light. Miss Thelma signed for it and fanned herself. Atlanta in August makes the air thick, and put the envelope in the stack by Dion's study lamp. He opened it late, while the house was quiet and the city wore its night lights like jewelry. It was the clinic's final checklist. Anesthesiologist on call, pediatric team notified, blood type cards. Clean, complete, the way rich people expect things to be. At the bottom, under the last clean checkbox, a line item had been added in pen, not print. Freezer audit. Completed, it said, with a squashed signature beside it. Dion had noticed because the ink was the same blue as the pen on his desk. He tucked the page back. He told himself details were good. He told himself to sleep. Then the morning came, and the in-laws filled the breakfast room with polished worry again. Then the drive. Then the delivery. Then the bright lights. Then the scream. Then the girl. Then the boy. Then the pediatrician's frown and the word that didn't belong in their story. Now, with the intercom still crackling from the doctor's last sentence, the embryo transferred to Nia was not yours. The past weeks rearranged themselves in Amara's mind like chairs after a party. The reschedules, the new badge reader, the pen on the paper, the way Tolu's eyes had kept sliding to the floor. Dion turned, his jaw tight. "We need the director," he said. "Now." As if the hospital heard his command, a woman stepped off the elevator in a slate suit. Her curls swept into a high puff. She wore a badge with two logos, the hospital's and the fertility clinic's. "I'm Dr. Naomi Halpern," she said, offering a hand neither of them took. "Can we talk in the consultation room?" They moved down the hall into a small glass box with 4 chairs and a clock that believed in discipline. Mama Joyce and the aunts followed, then hesitated at the threshold like women who wanted to hear everything but still be able to say later that they hadn't. They stayed. They always stayed. Dr. Halpern placed a thin tablet on the table and folded her hands. "First," she said, voice even, "both babies are stable. The carrier is stable. Everyone is being monitored closely." "Say the rest," Dion said. He was polite the way a storm is polite. "There was a discrepancy in the cryologs," Halpern said. "We performed a routine freezer audit last week after a software update. A unit labeled with your case number showed an access timestamp that did not align with your transfer date. When we dug deeper, we found that 2 straws, 2 embryos, were withdrawn within a minute of each other 12 days before the transfer. One of those withdrawals is accounted for in our chain of custody video. The second is not." Amara's fingers pressed into her dress. "Are you saying someone took an embryo out and put it back?" "I'm saying we cannot yet account for who accessed the second straw or why," Halpern replied. "Our initial review suggests human error, but we cannot rule out misconduct. We have already alerted the state board. We are cooperating with hospital compliance. We will pay for independent testing." "The babies are here," Amara said, steady. "They are ours. We built their path." "Legally," Halpern said carefully, "until genetic parentage is confirmed, the carrier retains immediate custodial control for medical decisions. Your contract is strong. It anticipates errors. But the court recognizes biology first." Mama Joyce's breath left her like a slapped candle. "Biology? My son's blood runs like a river in this town," she snapped. "That boy roared like his grandfather. That girl has our mark." Halpern's eyes softened. "Birthmarks can repeat in unrelated lines," she said. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I am trying to be honest." The door opened and a tall man slipped in, dark-skinned, mid-30s, in green scrubs and tired eyes. "Tolu." He closed the door behind him as if the hallway could listen. His hands shook, just enough to notice. "Ms. Williams," he said quietly. "Mr. Williams. I asked to be present." He looked at Halpern. "I also asked to speak." Halpern nodded. "Go ahead." Tolu swallowed. "On the night of the withdrawals, I was on call. The software had glitched during the day. We were migrating records to a new system. There was a backlog. A supervisor came in late, Mr. Gaines." He glanced up, as if checking the ceiling for camera lenses. "He instructed me to prepare 2 straws for a twin transfer in a VIP case, different family. I told him your file had 1 embryo listed, not 2. He told me to focus on my bench and not on the admin screen. He signed the log. I followed instructions." "Are you saying our embryo was taken for someone else?" Dion asked, each word clipped. Tolu's throat worked. "I'm saying a second straw was thawed and refrozen for a different case that night, which is against best practice. I flagged it the next morning. The note disappeared from the system the day after. Silence rolled through the room like heat. The ants stopped breathing. Mama Joyce made a sound that was not a word. Amara sat very still. The world had the clear edges it gets right before a fall. "Who is the other family?" she asked. Halpern looked down at her tablet. "I cannot disclose protected health information." "Find a way," Dion said, the command in his voice deepening. "Because my wife is sitting here listening to you say that our child may not be our child because someone treated our future like a spare part." Halpern's jaw tightened. "We can petition the court to unseal limited data for the purpose of a parentage action," she said. "But—" The intercom in the small room buzzed and the pediatrician's voice came through. "Dr. Halpern, lab delivered their preliminary panel. You said to patch you as soon as they cleared the first markers." Every head turned to the speaker. Halpern tapped the wall button. "Go ahead." "Short tandem repeat markers confirm the twins are dizygotic," the pediatrician said. "They do not share identical parents. Baby A's preliminary profile is consistent with Mr. Williams as father. Baby B's preliminary profile is not consistent with Mr. Williams, nor with the maternal DNA drawn from Mrs. Williams' sample on file. We need full panels to be certain, but the initial flags are clear." The room tilted, then righted, then tilted again. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Auntie Chica's hand flew to her chest. Mama Joyce's eyes flooded and dried in the same second. Dion did not move. Amara's voice, when it came, was soft and exact. "If baby B is not Dion's," she said, "and baby B is not mine, then whose is he?" Tolu closed his eyes like a man who has walked to the edge of a cliff and finally looks down. When he opened them, the fear in them had a name. He lifted his hand, and his fingers trembled as he pointed. Not at Halpern, not at the tablet, not at the intercom. He pointed at the glass wall facing the nursery hallway, where a family had just stepped out of an elevator under the sign that read VIP Suite. The man at the front was a familiar face from billboards and business magazines, a rival billionaire whose company had fought Dion's in 3 cities and 2 courts. He was holding a pink gift bag. Beside him, his wife cradled a bouquet of white lilies, smiling like a woman who had finally won a war no one else understood. Tolu whispered the name, and every jaw in the room dropped as the rival locked eyes with Dion, lifted 2 fingers in a small, smug salute, then turned, as a nurse rolled a bassinet labeled Baby B toward his suite. The air in the consultation room seemed to freeze. Even the clock on the wall, which had been ticking with steady discipline, suddenly felt louder, crueler. Dion's eyes narrowed, his chest rising and falling with the kind of rage that could set a city ablaze. He slammed his palm against the table so hard the tablet rattled. What is he doing here? The rival, Ezekiel Cole, stood tall and deliberate, his suit cut sharp like he was attending a board meeting instead of a maternity ward. His wife, Lillian, smiled a smile that was all teeth, no warmth. The nurse pushing the bassinet didn't notice the war that had just ignited behind the glass. She only hummed as she wheeled the little boy toward the VIP suite. Amara rose slowly, her silk gown whispering against the chair. "That's not possible," she said, voice trembling yet unbreakable. "That baby is ours. Both of them are ours." Dr. Halpern pressed her lips together, her professional calm slipping into something closer to fear. "The lab markers." "I don't care about markers," Amara snapped, stepping toward the glass. Her hand pressed against it, eyes locked on the tiny bundle in the bassinet. "I prayed for that child. I wept for that child. I planned his life before he even had breath. Don't you dare tell me he belongs to anyone else." Mama Joyce's voice cut in, sharp as a blade. "Dion, do something. They are trying to rob us in daylight." Dion was already moving. He yanked open the consultation room door and stormed into the hallway, his presence like thunder. Amara followed, the ants trailing close behind. Tolu lingered by the doorframe, his head bowed as if every step forward was a confession. "Ezekiel!" Dion's voice carried down the hall, and every head turned. The rival billionaire stopped, his smug salute still lingering in the air like smoke. "Dion," Ezekiel said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks as if they were the real topic. Congratulations. I hear fatherhood changes everything. You snake, Dion growled, striding closer, his fists clenched at his sides. What game is this? Ezekiel tilted his head, his smile never faltering. No game, my friend, just fate, or maybe science. You've always had the boardrooms, the headlines, the contracts. Did you really think fortune wouldn't balance the scales eventually? Amara stepped in front of her husband, her voice steady though her heart pounded. That child is not yours, Ezekiel. He is ours. Both children belong to us. Lillian Cole laughed lightly, the sound hollow. Belong? Children aren't trophies, Amara. They're blood. And the blood will prove where this little boy comes from. She leaned closer, her perfume trailing in the sterile air. You'll see soon enough. The nurse glanced nervously between the families, realizing too late that she had wheeled the bassinet into a battlefield. Dr. Halpern hurried forward, hands raised like a referee in a match gone wrong. Enough. This is a hospital, not a courtroom. The babies are safe, and that's what matters most. No custody discussions until the full DNA results return. Ezekiel smirked, unbothered. Of course, doctor. We'll wait. But sometimes the truth doesn't need a test. It just looks you in the face. His gaze flicked to the baby boy, then back to Dion. Tell me you don't see it. Dion's jaw tightened. He refused to look down, refused to acknowledge even the possibility. I see my son, he said firmly, each word a wall. But Amara noticed it, the small crease above the boy's brow, the one that matched a photograph she had once seen in a magazine profile of Ezekiel. Her stomach twisted, but she crushed the thought before it could bloom. Mama Joyce stepped forward, her gelly swaying as her chin lifted high. Mark my words, Ezekiel Cole, she declared. No power in heaven or earth will strip a Williams child from this family. Not yours, not the devil's. The hallway had filled with curious staff and hushed patients, all pretending not to stare while every eye drank in the spectacle. Ezekiel only adjusted his jacket, calm in the storm. We'll see, Joyce. We'll see. The nurse quickly wheeled the bassinet toward a side room, trying to end the scene. The sound of the baby's cry drifted behind her, small and helpless, yet it silenced every word on Amara's lips. She felt the sound pulling at her chest like a thread unraveling. Dr. Halpern cleared her throat, her voice tight. Both families will wait for the test results. Until then, visitation rights are under medical supervision. I'll assign security if necessary. Security. The word landed heavy. This was no longer about whispers or insults over hibiscus tea. This was war with guards and gates and signatures. Dion turned to Amara, his eyes burning. We won't wait. I'll have my lawyers on this before the ink dries on their smug little smiles. But Amara was staring down the hall where the nurse had disappeared with the bassinet. Her heart was screaming louder than her thoughts. 2 babies had been born that day. One had come into her arms in joy. The other was already slipping into someone else's grasp. And in that moment, she knew something no test could tell her. Something she couldn't explain yet, even to Dion. She felt both children were hers. Both. Her hands trembled as she whispered, They can fight all they want, but those babies are mine. The words hung in the air like a vow. And just as she said them, a hospital security officer jogged down the hallway, carrying a sealed folder. He handed it to Dr. Halpern with urgency. She glanced at the cover, her eyes widening. This can't be right, she murmured. What is it? Dion demanded. Halpern looked up, her voice careful. The preliminary report doesn't just suggest 2 different fathers. It shows the embryos may not have come from either of your families at all. The hallway erupted in gasps, and Amara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The words from Dr. Halpern struck like thunder in a dry season. For a moment, the hallway went utterly silent. Even the distant beeping of heart monitors seemed to fade. What do you mean, not from either family? Amara's voice cracked, her fingers gripping the edge of her gown. Her heart pounded as if trying to outrun the truth. Dr. Halpern's eyes swept over the families, then down to the sealed folder again. The report shows no genetic link between baby B and anyone in this room. Not the Williamses. Not the Coles. The gasp that followed echoed down the corridor. Auntie Chica's hand flew to her chest, her gelly tilting dangerously. Great Aunt Ruth began muttering a prayer under her breath, rocking slightly as if the ground itself had betrayed her. Dion's fists clenched so tight the veins rose along his arms. Impossible. That test must be wrong. It's preliminary, Halpern admitted quickly. But the markers are strong enough to raise serious questions. A full panel will confirm. Ezekiel Cole's smug smile faltered for the first time. His wife Lillian's eyes widened, confusion replacing her polished confidence. What are you saying? That we were brought here for nothing? I'm saying, Halpern replied carefully, there may have been a substitution, a switch, perhaps even an embryo that was never catalogued under either family's name. Amara swayed where she stood, her world blurring. She gripped Dion's arm, whispering, "No, no, they can't take him from us. Both of them belong to us." The nurse who had wheeled the bassinet earlier peeked nervously from the side room, holding the baby boy as if unsure whose arms he should fall into. The sound of his cry pierced the tense air, a desperate reminder that this wasn't just about contracts and science. This was a child, breathing, needing, existing. Tolu, the embryologist, finally stepped forward, his face pale with guilt. This is what I feared. That night, when Gaines ordered the double thaw, I know he switched the straws. Switched them? Dion snapped, his voice so sharp the nurse flinched. Yes, Tolu whispered, eyes filling with tears. He didn't use the second straw from your file at all. He used one from an unclaimed batch embryos that should have been destroyed years ago, or placed in long-term storage until claimed. He covered his tracks. And now, he gestured weakly toward the babies. Now this is the result. The room spun for Amara. Her knees buckled, and Mama Joyce quickly caught her elbow, steadying her. Stay strong, child, the older woman whispered, though her own voice trembled. Dion's fury broke loose. He stormed toward Halpern, pointing a shaking finger. Your clinic will burn for this. Do you understand? You played with our family like a lab experiment. You toyed with my wife's soul. You toyed with my bloodline. Halpern's voice was tight, defensive. We did not sanction this. Gaines acted outside of protocol. He's already under investigation. Investigation? Mama Joyce barked. My grandchildren are not some laboratory mistake to be explained away with paperwork. Ezekiel stepped forward, his mask of confidence gone. His words were quieter now, bitter. So, neither of these children are mine? After everything? He glared at Halpern. You dragged my wife and me here, paraded us like fools, and for what? Lillian looked stricken, clutching her bouquet of lilies so tightly that petals began to snap and fall. For a brief moment, Amara found her voice again, softer, yet filled with fire. She stepped toward the nurse cradling baby B. Her eyes locked on the tiny face, the small hands curling against the blanket. I don't care what your papers say, she whispered. That boy is still mine. He came through Nia. He came because we chose hope. Dion looked at her, torn between rage and heartbreak, but his silence spoke louder than words. He, too, had already claimed both children in his heart. The nurse's eyes darted nervously to Dr. Halpern, as if seeking guidance. Halpern hesitated, her authority crumbling under the weight of the family's grief and anger. Finally, she sighed. Until the final results are back, both children will remain under hospital custody. That is standard when disputes arise. The words landed like a hammer blow. Amara's chest heaved. You would keep them from me? After everything? After all the nights I prayed? After all the shame I endured? Her voice rose until it cracked. You will not take my babies away. The tension in the hallway reached its breaking point. Nurses whispered in corners. Security officers hovered. Patients craned their necks from open doors. And just when it seemed the room might explode, the double doors at the end of the hall burst open. A man in a charcoal suit strode in, flanked by two stern-looking officials. His voice boomed across the corridor. "I am here on behalf of the State Board of Health. Effective immediately, the infants born under case file number 7834 are under state investigation for embryo tampering and unauthorized transfer. Until further notice, neither family has legal custody." The officer beside him stepped forward, reaching for the babies. Amara's scream tore through the hall. "No!" She lunged for the nurse holding baby B, desperation driving her past reason. Dion caught her mid-stride, but the raw pain in her eyes told everyone, that this was no longer just a fight with in-laws or rivals. This was war against a system that could steal her motherhood in a single signature. The babies cried louder, their voices rising into the chaos. And as the officials moved closer, one of the aunts whispered the question on everyone's lips. If neither family is the parent, then who, in God's name, does the second child belong to? The declaration from the state board official left the entire corridor in stunned silence. Even the baby's cries seemed to echo more harshly against the sterile hospital walls. Amara clutched at Dion's arm, her voice breaking. "Dion, they can't just take them. They can't." Dion's jaw was hard as granite. He stepped forward, blocking the official's path with the kind of authority that had made investors tremble in boardrooms. "You are not laying a hand on my children. I don't care what badge you carry." The official raised a calm, bureaucratic hand. "Mr. Williams, if you obstruct this process, you'll be arrested. This is not negotiable. The babies will remain in hospital custody until the investigation is complete." Gasps rippled down the hall. Mama Joyce clutched her wrapper tighter around her chest, her eyes blazing. "You'll arrest my son? In front of his children? Do you people have no shame?" One of the aunts began to cry softly, while the other muttered, "This is a curse. Our enemies are rejoicing." Ezekiel Cole folded his arms, watching with an expression halfway between fury and grim satisfaction. His wife Lillian, however, shook her head in disbelief. "So we flew here for nothing. We were dragged into this mess for nothing." Dr. Halpern tried to salvage control. "Everyone, please. Let's remember the children's safety comes first." Amara suddenly stepped forward, her eyes wild. "And what about their hearts? What about the bond already made? What about me? Those babies know my voice. They know me." She pointed to baby A, who was now fussing in another nurse's arms. "Look, when I speak, she calms. You think a piece of paper can erase that?" Baby A's cries did soften the moment Amara's voice cut through, a fragile whimper replacing the wail. The nurse glanced at Halpern, uncertain, but didn't hand the baby over. The official frowned, motioning to the officers at his side. "Secure both infants. They will be transferred to the neonatal custody unit until—" "Over my dead body," Dion thundered. His voice reverberated down the hall, and even the officers froze at the force of it. Amara turned, her chest heaving, and locked eyes with Nia, still lying weak in the delivery room bed, watching everything unfold through the open doorway. Nia's face was pale, but her voice, when it came, carried strength no one expected. "You won't take them from me either." Everyone turned. Nia struggled to sit up, her hand gripping the rail for support. "I carried them. I bore the pain. By law, until anything else is proven, I am their mother. And I say," she pointed a trembling hand at the officials, "you will not touch them." The hallway erupted again. Dion and Amara exchanged a look of shock. Mama Joyce's jaw dropped. The officials hesitated, clearly unprepared for the surrogate herself to stand against them. Halpern raised her voice, trying to cut through the chaos. "Ms. Rivers, you signed the surrogacy contract." "I signed it with their embryo in mind," Nia interrupted, her voice hoarse but powerful. "Not with strangers. Not with stolen bloodlines. And until this is sorted, I am the only legal constant here. You'll need a court order to strip me of custody." Her words sliced through the official's authority like a blade. The lead officer's lips pressed into a thin line. He exchanged a glance with the man in the charcoal suit. Dion stepped closer to Nia's doorway, his tone softer now. Nia, you don't have to do this. You've already given us so much. But Nia shook her head. I won't let them treat me like a vessel that can be discarded. Those babies are innocent. If the system wants to play games with who's allowed to love them, then I'll stand here as their shield. For the first time, Amara felt something shift in her heart toward the young woman she had once seen as merely desperate. Nia wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for their children, for the bond that had grown between all of them in ways none of them could have predicted. The official adjusted his tie, visibly unsettled. Fine. But understand this, Ms. Rivers, if you claim custody even temporarily, you are also claiming liability. Should the DNA results prove misconduct, you could face consequences as well. Nia's chin lifted, though her body trembled. Then so be it. I'd rather face consequences than let 2 innocent lives get lost in bureaucracy. Dion exhaled, long and heavy, and finally looked at Amara. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but beneath the pain was a quiet fire. She's right, Amara whispered. If we lose control of this moment, we may lose everything. Mama Joyce crossed herself and muttered a prayer. Auntie Chica nodded vigorously. Yes, let her hold that line. At least until the truth comes out. Ezekiel scoffed, but his smile was gone. Even he knew the tide had shifted. Halpern raised both hands, conceding. Very well. Until the final DNA report is released, custody remains with the carrier. That is the law. The official gave a curt nod. We'll file the necessary motions, but we'll be watching closely. He turned on his heel, signaling his men to withdraw. The tension eased, but only slightly. Amara rushed to the nurse, her hands trembling as she finally cradled baby A. The infant's tiny face relaxed against her chest, as if she knew she had found her mother again. Across the hall, Nia reached for baby B with shaking arms. The nurse hesitated, then slowly handed him over. The boy whimpered once before settling against the woman who had carried him. For the first time since the chaos began, the hallway fell into a fragile peace. 2 women, one wealthy, one once homeless, stood with the children between them, united in defiance against a system that wanted to tear them apart. But in that fragile peace lay a storm waiting to break. Because though the state had stepped back, the biggest question still lingered like a shadow no one could ignore. If baby B did not belong to the Williamses, nor the Coles, whose child was he? And somewhere deep inside, Amara feared that the answer, when it came, would shatter them all. The hospital corridor buzzed with the uneasy quiet that comes after a storm. Nurses moved quickly but spoke in hushed tones. Visitors stole glances, pretending not to watch. The Williams and Cole families stood divided, but both knew the battle was far from over. Inside the private consultation room, Amara sat holding baby A, rocking gently, as if she could shield the infant from the chaos beyond the walls. Her eyes were fixed on the tiny chest rising and falling. Each breath felt like a miracle she refused to surrender. Across from her, Nia sat propped on pillows, baby B nestled in her arms. She looked fragile, worn down from labor, but her gaze was fierce. Her body screamed exhaustion, but her spirit clung stubbornly to the small boy she had just defended with her very name. Dion paced the room, his phone pressed to his ear. Get me an injunction now. I don't care if it's midnight. I don't care if you wake the judge. My children are not pawns in a state investigation. He paused, listening, then barked again. I said now. He ended the call with a forceful jab, his breathing ragged. Mama Joyce sat stiffly, her hands clasped, whispering prayers under her breath. Auntie Chica muttered curses aimed at wicked enemies, while Aunt Ruth kept shaking her head, repeating, "This kind of thing only happens when secrets have roots." But it was Ezekiel Cole who broke the silence. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his smile finally gone. His wife Lillian sat beside him, her bouquet abandoned on the floor, petals scattered like broken promises. "You do realize," Ezekiel said, voice low but sharp, "that no matter how much you posture, the truth will come out. And when it does, one of those babies might not be yours." And if that's the case, you'll have raised another man's son under your roof. Dion whipped around, his fists clenching. Get out. Ezekiel smirked faintly. You don't have the power to dismiss me. The board called us here, same as you. Whether you like it or not, my name is now tied to this mess. Amara spoke before Dion could explode. Her voice was quiet but steady. You think this is about names? Or power? No, Ezekiel. This is about two children who didn't ask to be born into this fight. Whatever this clinic did, whatever strings were pulled, those babies are innocent. And I will fight tooth and nail before I let them become trophies in your rivalry. Ezekiel opened his mouth to reply, but before he could, the door creaked open. Talou, the embryologist, stepped in again. His hands trembled as he held out a folder, his eyes flickering between Dion, Amara, and Nia. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent, he began. His voice cracked with fear, but also with resolve. I told you part of the truth earlier. Gaines did order the double thaw that night. But there was more. Something I didn't say. Dion's eyes narrowed. Speak. Talou swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. When I realized the second straw wasn't from your file, I checked the system logs. What I found... He hesitated, then placed the folder on the table. There was a donor profile tied to that embryo. A donor who should never have been in our bank at all. Amara's hands tightened around baby A. What do you mean? The donor, Talou said carefully, was someone high profile. Someone who signed a contract years ago that was supposed to have been voided. But somehow, his genetic material was still in our storage, hidden under a false name. Mama Joyce leaned forward, suspicion heavy in her tone. Who? Talou's voice dropped. A politician, very powerful, and very dangerous. The room froze. Even Ezekiel straightened, his smirk gone. Amara's voice quivered. You're saying, baby B might belong to a man in power? Talou nodded slowly. And if that's true, this isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's political. If the truth comes out, it could destroy more than one household. It could destroy reputations, businesses, even lives. Dion's face darkened. He ran a hand over his jaw, struggling to process. So my son, my wife's son, could be tied to a man who has enemies in every corner of this country? Yes, Talou whispered. And if that man finds out, he will not let this go quietly. Silence swallowed the room. Baby B stirred in Nia's arms, letting out a soft cry. She rocked him gently, whispering, Shoo, baby, you're safe. But Amara's eyes brimmed with tears as she stared at the boy. Safe? No, none of them were safe anymore. And as the reality set in, the door opened once again, this time to reveal two men in dark suits with earpieces. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't need to. They stepped into the room, scanned the faces, and said coldly, We're here for the child. The two men in dark suits filled the doorway like shadows. Their expressions were unreadable, but their presence screamed authority. Authority that went beyond the hospital, beyond the state board, beyond anything Amara or Dion could control. Dion immediately stepped in front of Amara and baby A, his frame blocking them. You're not taking anything from this room, he barked. One of the men's eyes swept coldly across the space before landing on Nia, who clutched baby B tighter against her chest. The infant stirred, then whimpered softly as if sensing the tension. We're here for the boy, the taller agent said. His voice was low, precise, leaving no room for argument. Nia's knuckles whitened around the blanket. No, he's mine. Carried him. You can't just walk in here and... The shorter agent cut her off. This isn't a request, ma'am. This is a matter of state interest. Ezekiel's brows shot up, and for the first time, his arrogance slipped. State interest? He muttered, exchanging a sharp glance with Lillian. Dr. Halpern rose from her seat, visibly shaken. You can't remove the child without a proper order. The hospital has protocols. The taller agent turned, producing a document with an embossed seal. He placed it on the table with a thud. Here's your order, signed at the highest level. Effective immediately. Mama Joyce reached for the paper, squinting through her glasses. Her face paled. This seal. This is from the governor's office. Gasps rippled through the room. Dion's fury flared. So it's true, he spat. Some politician's fingerprints are all over this. Amara's voice trembled, but her words carried fire. And now you want to erase the boy? Sweep him away so no one learns the truth. The agents didn't answer. They stepped forward, their gazes fixed only on baby B. Nia pressed her back against the headboard, clutching the baby so tightly it seemed she would fuse him into her chest. Tears streaked down her cheeks. You'll have to tear him from me, she whispered. The taller agent's jaw flexed. He moved closer, extending his arms. Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Suddenly, Dion blocked him, his towering frame nose to nose with the agent. You lay one hand on that child, he growled, and I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly whose bloodline you're trying to hide. The agent's hand paused midair. His eyes narrowed, the slightest flicker of unease betraying him. Tolu, still pale and trembling, spoke up from the corner. If you take the boy, you confirm the suspicion. And if that suspicion leaks, it won't just ruin a politician. It'll bring down the clinic, the hospital, maybe even your office. Everyone froze. Tolu's words rang with a dangerous truth. The shorter agent's lips tightened. He muttered something into his earpiece. A beat of silence followed. Then he turned back to the room. We'll be back for him. Don't leave this hospital. With that, the two men turned sharply and strode out, their footsteps echoing like thunder down the hall. The room erupted in voices at once. Mama Joyce collapsed back into her chair, fanning herself furiously. God help us. This is bigger than we thought. Auntie Chica clutched Ruth's hand. If they want that child, then he is worth more than gold. Ezekiel's eyes narrowed, suspicion blooming into greed. So the boy isn't yours or mine, but he is powerful. Perhaps more powerful than either of you realize. Lillian tugged his arm sharply, hissing, Ezekiel, stop! Amara, still clutching baby A, turned slowly to Nia, whose tears dripped onto baby B's soft head. Their eyes locked. For the first time, there was no wall between them. Only the shared knowledge that they were both mothers now, fighting forces bigger than themselves. Amara whispered, her voice trembling. We can't let them take him. Not the state. Not Ezekiel. Not anyone. If we lose him now, we may never see him again. Dion's face hardened into resolve. Then we fight. But we fight smart. No more shouting in hallways. No more reacting. We get ahead of them. We use the same weapons they use: law, influence, and exposure. Nia shook her head, fear thick in her voice. You don't understand. If they know he survived, they'll never stop. They'll chase us to the ends of the earth. Dion turned to her, eyes burning with a promise. Then we won't let them know. Not yet. Everyone stared at him, stunned. Amara's voice cracked. Dion, what are you saying? He leaned close, his voice low but fierce. I'm saying we hide the boy, until we know exactly whose blood runs in his veins, and until we're strong enough to face whoever wants him gone. Nia gasped, clutching baby B tighter. Amara's heart skipped in her chest, torn between fear and the smallest spark of hope. And as the room sank into stunned silence, the boy let out a cry so loud it seemed to carry a message of its own. He would not go quietly. The cry of baby B filled the room, louder than any word, louder than the thud of fear in everyone's chest. For a moment, no one moved. The walls seemed to close in, carrying the weight of a decision that could alter all of their lives forever. Amara's arms tightened around baby A, her eyes darting between the tiny girl in her embrace and the boy squirming against Nia's chest. She felt a war inside her heart, one that whispered, protect them both, even as the danger grew sharper with every passing second. Dion broke the silence first. We need to act before those men return, he said, his tone steely, commanding. They'll be back, and when they come, they won't ask again. Mama Joyce leaned forward, her wrapper rustling as she clasped her hands together. And what exactly do you suggest, Dion? Sneak a baby out of a hospital crawling with guards? You'll land us all in prison. Dion's gaze cut to her like a blade. Better prison than a coffin. Do you think those men are here to protect the child? No. They came to bury the truth. And burying the truth means burying him. The words sucked the air out of the room. Even Ezekiel, whose arrogance usually oozed through every syllable, fell silent. Lillian covered her mouth, horrified. Nia rocked Baby B instinctively, her tears falling freely now. I can't lose him. I won't. If you want to hide him, then take me too. He needs me. Amara's heart clenched. She stepped closer to Nia, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. For the first time, their eyes locked not as employer and surrogate, but as two mothers bound by a storm. We'll protect him together, Amara whispered. Dion's mind was already racing ahead. Tolu, the embryologist startled, his hands still shaking as he clutched his folder. Why yes. You said the embryo came from a donor, a politician. Dion's eyes narrowed. Who is he? Tolu hesitated, sweat beading on his brow. His voice was barely above a whisper. Senator Marcus Davenport. Gasps exploded around the room. Amara nearly dropped Baby A. Marcus Davenport? The man who's been grooming himself for a presidential run. Tolu nodded miserably. Yes, his samples were supposed to have been destroyed over a decade ago. He used a false donor name back then to cover his tracks, but I recognized his profile. He's the biological father of Baby B. Ezekiel let out a low whistle. Well, the son of a kingmaker. That explains the men in suits. His smirk returned, cruel and calculating. Do you have any idea how dangerous this game is? You're holding the child of the most powerful man in the state. Mama Joyce slapped her thigh in fury. That's why they came. Not because they care about the boy, but because they care about protecting Davenport's spotless name. Dion's face darkened like a gathering storm. If they think they can erase this child to protect their politics, they don't know who they're dealing with. Nia's sobs deepened. So what happens now? Do we run? Do we stay? Do we fight them head on? Amara brushed Baby A's soft cheek, then looked at Baby B in Nia's trembling arms. We fight, but we fight smart. If Davenport wants this buried, then the only way to keep the boy safe is to make sure his story can't be silenced. Ezekiel tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. Meaning? Dion's voice was grim but resolute. Meaning we take this to the public. The world needs to know about the mix-up, about the tampering, about the powerful men who'd rather erase a child than admit their sins. Once it's out, they can't just make him disappear. Mama Joyce gasped. Dion, no. If you go public, you'll put all of us in danger. You'll be declaring war on a man who owns half the state. We're already at war, Dion snapped. I won't sit here and watch them steal my son, or cover his existence in lies. Amara stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. Then we decide together, because this isn't just about politics. It's about family. It's about love. These children didn't ask for this fight. But if we're the ones chosen to protect them, then we must stand. The room fell into tense silence, broken only by the soft cries of Baby B. Ezekiel leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, a dark smile tugging at his lips. If you go public, you'll need allies. And maybe... He let the words hang, his tone dripping with calculation. Maybe I'd be willing to help. For a price. Everyone turned to him, stunned. You'd help us? Amara asked, disbelief in her voice. Ezekiel's smirk widened. Let's just say Davenport has stepped on more than one empire to get where he is. If exposing him helps me, and keeps you from losing what you love, then maybe we're on the same side, for now. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Dion glared at him, his fists clenched, torn between hatred and reluctant consideration. Amara looked between them, her heart racing, knowing that the decision they made in this moment could either save both babies or destroy them all. And as Baby B let out another sharp cry, the sound seemed almost like a warning. The storm was only just beginning. The night pressed heavily against the hospital windows, city lights twinkling like watchful eyes. Inside the private room, tension hung so thick it felt like another presence among them. Baby A and Baby B had both fallen asleep, their tiny breaths the only gentle rhythm in a room filled with pounding hearts. Dion stood at the window, fists pressed against the glass. "If we're going to move, it has to be tonight," he said. "By morning, Davenport's men will have this place crawling with agents. Once that happens, we'll never get the boy out." Amara rocked Baby A gently, her eyes locked on her husband's back. She wanted to believe in his strength, his ability to fight giants. But the thought of sneaking out of a hospital with 2 newborns made her chest ache with fear. "Dion, are you sure? Running could make us fugitives. We'll be hunted." Dion turned, his eyes blazing. "Better hunted than buried. I won't wait for them to decide my children's fate. We decide." Ezekiel chuckled darkly from his corner. "Bold words. But without me you won't get far. Davenport has eyes everywhere. I fought him in courtrooms. You think you can fight him in the shadows? You'll need my resources." "Your resources always come with a knife at the back," Dion snapped. Ezekiel smirked. "True. But right now our enemy is the same. And nothing unites rivals faster than a common enemy." Lillian tugged at Ezekiel's arm. "Stop playing games, Zeke. This is about children, not contracts." For once, her voice carried genuine emotion. She looked at Amara. "I may not like you, but as a mother, I can't stomach what they're trying to do." Amara's gaze softened slightly. For the first time, she saw a sliver of humanity in the woman who had always been her rival's ornament. Mama Joyce shook her head, muttering a prayer. "You young people want to take on the whole state? With babies in your arms? This is madness." Nia, weak but resolute, spoke up. "It's madness if we do nothing. If they take Baby B, he'll vanish into some secret file, and none of us will ever see him again." She hugged the child closer, her voice breaking. "I'd rather die running than live knowing I let them erase him." Silence fell. The raw truth of Nia's words weighed heavier than any argument. Dion looked at her, then at Amara, then at the 2 infants. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "We're doing this, but we do it carefully. We'll need a distraction." All eyes turned to Ezekiel. He smirked knowingly. "Ah, now you see my value. Don't mistake necessity for trust," Dion warned. "One wrong move, and I'll end you myself." Ezekiel's smile only widened. "Duly noted." Talou, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat nervously. "If you're serious about leaving, I can help. I still have access to the staff tunnels under the hospital. They're old, barely used, but they lead out to the parking structure. From there, well, you'll still need to slip past cameras." Dion's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help us? You've already risked enough by speaking up." Talou's hands shook as he wrung them together. "Because if Davenport buries this, he buries me too. I was there the night it happened. If I don't act now, I'll be erased just like this child. Helping you might be the only way I save myself." Amara studied him carefully. His fear was genuine, but so was his desperation. In that moment, she realized they weren't just a family fighting for survival. They were a collection of broken people forced together by a system that thrived on silence. "Then it's settled," Dion said firmly. "We leave tonight. We get them to safety. And once they're safe, we bring Davenport down with the truth." Mama Joyce clutched her wrapper tighter, shaking her head. "You're playing with fire, and fire doesn't care who it burns." Dion stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "Then let it burn. Better the fire than the silence." Outside the door, the faint sound of boots echoed down the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. Nia's grip on Baby B tightened. Amara's heart skipped, fear and determination clashing inside her chest. Dion turned toward the group, his eyes fierce. "They're coming back." The boots stopped just outside the door. A shadow moved across the frosted glass window. Then came a knock, slow, heavy, deliberate, and a voice none of them expected called from the hallway. "Open the door. I'm Senator Marcus Davenport, and I've come for my son." The room froze, every breath, Every heartbeat seemed to stop at once. The man behind the door wasn't just powerful. He was untouchable. Senator Marcus Davenport. His very name carried the weight of influence, the kind that could move courts, bend laws, and silence enemies. Nia clutched baby B to her chest, trembling. Amara instinctively drew baby A closer, her body shielding the infant as though Davenport's voice itself could harm her. Dion's jaw tightened. He looked at the door, then back at his family. "Don't open it," he said through gritted teeth. But the knock came again. Slower this time, heavier, like a warning. "You don't want me to force my way in," Davenport's voice called, calm yet commanding. "I'm here to make a deal." Ezekiel smirked bitterly. "Deals? That's all men like him know." Dion squared his shoulders. "Stay back," he whispered to the women. Then, louder, toward the door. "If you think you can just walk in and claim a child like property, you're mistaken, Senator." A pause. Then Davenport's voice again, quieter now, almost persuasive. "Mr. Williams, you're a smart man. You know how power works. That boy is mine by blood, by destiny. But I'm not here to take him by force. Not yet. I'm here to offer you something in return." Everyone exchanged stunned glances. Mama Joyce clutched her chest. "God forbid," she muttered under her breath. Amara found her voice, shaky but defiant. "What could you possibly offer that would make us hand over an innocent child?" The senator's tone carried a chilling confidence. "Protection, wealth, silence. Imagine what doors I could open for you, Amara. Imagine what shields I could place around your family. Dion, your empire would never fall. Your children, your other child, would never know struggle." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "And what about him?" she shouted. "What about baby B? You'd raise him as a secret? Hide him like a mistake? Or worse, erase him when it's convenient?" For the first time, Davenport's tone sharpened. "That boy carries my blood. He will not be erased. But he will not be raised under your roof either. My enemies would use him against me, and you can't protect him from that." Dion stepped closer to the door, his voice a low growl. "And you think you can? By hiding him? By raising him in shadows?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then Davenport spoke again, steady and cold. "This is not about what you want. It's about survival. If you keep that child, every resource I have will be turned against you. Your businesses, your name, your safety gone. You'll lose everything." Amara's voice trembled, but her words cut like glass. "Then so be it. I'd rather lose everything than lose my soul." Nia clutched baby B tighter, whispering fiercely to the infant. "He's mine. Carried him. I nearly died bringing him into this world. If you want him, Senator, you'll have to tear him from my arms." Davenport's voice hardened. "Don't test me." Suddenly, baby B let out a piercing cry, so loud, so raw, that it echoed through the room like a battle horn. Amara looked at the boy, then at baby A in her arms, and something inside her shifted. Her fear melted into fire. She stepped forward, standing beside Nia. Together, the two women formed a wall of defiance, each clutching a child, their gazes locked on the door. Dion placed himself in front of them, his body a shield. "You want him, Senator?" His voice thundered with unshakable resolve. "Then you'll have to come through me." The hallway went silent. No more knocks. No more words. Only the weight of the standoff pressing against the thin hospital door. After a long pause, Davenport's voice returned, calm but venomous. "You've made your choice. Pray you can live with it." His footsteps receded down the hall, each one echoing like a promise of war. Inside the room, the group exhaled as if they had all been holding the same breath. Mama Joyce wiped tears from her eyes. "We are in deep waters now," she whispered. "But God never lets his children drown." Ezekiel leaned back, shaking his head with a grim smile. "You've just declared war on a man who owns half the state. I hope you're ready." Dion turned to Amara and Nia, his eyes fierce. "We'll protect them, both of them, no matter what it costs." Amara kissed baby A's forehead, then reached out and touched Baby B's tiny hand. "They're ours now," she whispered, "and no power on earth will take them away." The room fell into silence, but it was not peace. It was the silence before the storm. Because though Davenport had walked away tonight, everyone in that room knew the battle had only just begun.